As the inauguration of Joe Biden as President of the United States approaches, BBC News has in-depth coverage. The President-elect will be sworn in on January the 20th. But with President Trump yet to formally concede, what surprises lie ahead? Catch up on the headlines as they happen with breaking news alerts in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the latest from the US inauguration with BBC News.
Why do we root for the little guy? iPlayer.
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Rachel Burden and Charlie State.
Our headlines today: act like you have the virus. That's the advice in a new campaign urging people to abide by lockdown rules.
Donald Trump is banned permanently from Twitter because of worries his tweets could incite more violence.
A warning over coronavirus scams after a 92-year-old woman was injected with a fake vaccine.
Good morning. Unlikely heroes, giant killing a banana skin.
This morning, as is freezing fog. More details for you in around about 15 minutes.
Good morning, it's Saturday the 9th of January. That's a good start, isn't it? And here's our top story today. People in England
Start the pandemic. Our correspondent, Dan Johnson, has more.
COVID-19, especially the new variant, is spreading quickly across the country. This puts many people at risk of serious disease.
A new campaign with a clear message. Want of control. Many doctors are frustrated.
I'm very worried that we've reached the peak and we're really not seeing the kind of behaviour that we saw in the first wave.
Figures showed 1,325 people died within 28 days of a positive COVID test, the most in a single day during the entire pandemic.
I was fine, healthy, young family, just getting on with my life, and this is completely floored me.
Act like you have the virus and don't go out. Don't mix with people. There are signs of
lives.
Dan Johnson, BBC News.
Twitter says it has permanently banned President Trump from the site following a review of his account.
The social media platform said his tweets were highly likely to encourage more violence. Our North America correspondent David Willis joins us now from Los Angeles. Did this come as any great surprise, given that they had given a specific warning about banning him?
They had given a warning, Rachel, you're absolutely right. And isn't it bizarre? The most powerful man in the world no longer has access to one of his most treasured assets, his Twitter account. Donald Trump, of course, once described himself as the Hemingway of 140 characters. He said that he didn't need the mainstream media here. He could talk directly to his supporters, and that he's been doing, 88 million of them for many years. But Twitter, citing what it called the risk of further incitement of violence, has now permanently closed down Donald Trump's Twitter account. And there was a bizarre sort of contest of whack-a-mole tonight, because the president attempted, in the absence of his own account, to pop up on other accounts, the White House official account among them, to voice his displeasure about Twitter's decision and to mention that he is now considering setting up his own social media outlet. Well, it's difficult to imagine one that will give him quite as much access to the great public here than Twitter. But nonetheless, Mr. Trump very dismayed by all accounts about this. Meanwhile, the Democrats are pressing ahead with plans to, or attempts to, remove him from office. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying today that if Donald Trump doesn't resign, she will seek to invoke what's called the 25th Amendment, or go for his impeachment, which would mean that he was the only president on record were it to succeed to be impeached twice in his presidency.
Extraordinary times in the United States at the moment. Thank you very much, David Willis.
People are being warned to stay vigilant about scams in which criminals offer COVID vaccinations for a fee.
Hi, John. Good to see you. Dear John, we saw you on Breakfast TV and we thought we would send you a card to cheer you up. Christmas is a very difficult time for lots of people. Sending hugs. What do you think to all the cards that you've had, John?
Just thank people, that's all I do.
Yeah, and that's enough, John. Just to see you smiling again, that's enough. Thank you for your service.
John died in hospital last week. He was 101. His carers say he was deeply moved by the cards and gifts he received, would read them till late at night, and that he wasn't lonely at the end.
It was a gorgeous story when it happened. The response was incredible from you. So really, really sad to hear this news today. And we'll be joined by John's carer, Marsha Hughes, at 9:30 this morning.
It's another one of those moments, isn't it, when a spotlight is put on a moment in time and people reacted in the most amazing way, which in itself will have lifted other people as well.
Exactly,
so John will, he will have affected other people too. So it's an amazing story.
We need stories like that at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, 12 minutes past 6 time. Let's have a look. Johnson urging people to stay at home as the
current rules and are considering tougher measures to deal.
Food for use in the UK.
But these are pictures from the Spanish capital, Madrid, which looks incredible. The first snowfall there in 10 years. The region has been put on red alert with more snow forecast. And we'll come to our own weather forecast in just a moment, but we'll take a quick look on the inside pages. Today,
the average Brit watches 28 hours of telly every 7 days, more than 1,300. How much is it?
4 hours a day, isn't that right? I don't trust my maths ever. I don't watch 4 hours of television a day, but my children probably make up for the time that I don't watch. I'm sure they might even watch more.
It probably makes it sounds about right, actually, doesn't it? Especially if you get involved in a binge session of something you're watching.
Listen, the other thing that we're talking about today is compliance with the rules after the case of the 2 women who were fined for driving 5 miles from their home to go for a walk together, also for taking coffee or tea with them in mugs, which the police said was basically a picnic. Derbyshire police have actually said they're going to review those fines, but it caused a huge stir yesterday. But surprisingly, the number of people who support Derbyshire police, actually, people were getting in touch on social media last night.
Unspecified, isn't it, what local means in how you're allowed to travel. And in this case, you've got a police officers who took one position on it, and there'll be others that take others. So, yeah, we'll talk about that a little later on. Right now, though, if you can't move from the position on the sofa.
I'm not that desperate for some excitement. But...
Helen, how's things?
Of course, we didn't have the amounts of snow that we saw across in Spain, a once in 20 or 30 year event over there, but we still had some quite considerable amounts of snow falling. Milder air will work in across the country, but we've still got cold air heading in from the northeast. So a bit of a mixed picture as we head through the course of next week. Temperatures not as cold as they have been recently, but things are looking a little bit unsettled, particularly through the middle part of the week. But all in all, as we head into next week, it won't be as cold as it has been. There'll be a bit of rain around at times, some snow over the hills and the driest conditions in the south. Bye-bye.
What makes World Service so unique is its genuine world perspective.
This is BBC News, the headlines. Twitter has permanently suspended President Trump's personal account following what the social media firm called a close review of his recent posts. It concluded that allowing him further access could lead to further incitements of violence. Mr. Trump later tweeted from the @POTUS government account, "We will not be silenced." This has since been deleted. Democratic Party members of the US House of Representatives have circulated the draft of a new impeachment resolution against the president.
Hello, this is Breakfast with Rachel Burden and Charlie State.
Good morning. Here's a summary of today's main stories from BBC News. People in England are being urged to act like you've got coronavirus as part of a new campaign.
The message will be shared on TV and radio adverts as well as on social media in a bid to encourage people to abide by lockdown rules. It comes as the UK reported the highest daily death toll since the start of the pandemic. A major incident has also been declared in London, with fears hospitals could be overwhelmed within weeks.
President Donald Trump has been permanently suspended from Twitter. The company said the decision was made after a review of his account, adding his tweets were highly likely to encourage more violence. Mr. Trump was locked out of his account for 12 hours on Wednesday after he called the people who stormed the US Capitol building patriots.
People are being warned to stay vigilant about scams.
We'll need distractions at the moment, and no better distraction than the FA Cup, Mike, and lots to look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, and the third round never really fails to disappoint, and already it started, but in a different way, because have a look at this photo. It looks like a...
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Rachel Burden and Charlie State. Permanently from Twitter because of worries his tweets could incite more violence.
A warning over coronavirus.
It's all part of FA Cup third round weekend, but Liverpool...
Details for you in around about 15 minutes.
Good morning. Good morning, it's it's Saturday the 9th of January. That's a good start, isn't it?
Hello, this is Breakfast with Rachel Burden and Charlie State.
It's all going to be in vain. All this blood, sweat and tears, all the hard work. Hopefully not.
Thank you, Mike.
Time now is 6:36. If you thought Donald Trump would leave the White House quietly, this week has been anything but.
Overnight, he was banned from Twitter permanently. There have been calls for him to be removed from office after 5 people died when supporters of the president stormed the Capitol building.
Well, let's concentrate on those events for just a moment. Drew Willison was responsible for security at the building when he was serving as what's known as the Senate Sergeant at Arms. That was between 2008 and 2015. He joins us now. Now, you have very good morning to you. You have extraordinary experience, Drew Willison, that we obviously from a distance don't know about. As you're watching events unfold, I'm not sure where you were.
I was at home in Maryland and watching it on TV. I was actually watching the electoral count, which was supposed to be the most interesting thing that went on all day.
The group of people who'd been holding a rally came towards the building and then they surged up those main steps. It's a picture you'll be very, very well familiar with.
I think the difficulty is that in the planning for events and the Capitol hosts protests, dozens and dozens of times per year, that they were in a posture probably better suited for a sort of a raucous protest rather than a presidentially inspired riot coming up.
Drew,
and once they through some of those barricades, it's difficult.
I was just going to draw your attention, given...
I think the issue is a little more complicated than that, honestly. During the Black Lives Matter protests last summer, the Capitol Police were on a similar posture to what they were on Wednesday. An open and welcoming environment, which is sort of a cornerstone of our democracy. It's difficult. It's difficult to go to full riot gear without it being maybe contrary to the image that the members of Congress want to present.
And Drew, there's been a lot of criticism for the police who were there at the time, who allowed...
No way that people weren't going to be hurt, but I think given the circumstances, they did a very good job of protecting as much life and property as they could have.
I'm going to just ask you, I mean, you made reference already to the fact that the President, Donald Trump, was addressing that rally outside, and a lot of people see that very clearly as incitement to what then happened. What we know today is that Twitter has permanently suspended Donald Trump's account. Now, that was one of the ways in which he often communicated with people. I mean, I wonder what your reaction is to that. I mean, are you surprised it didn't happen before? Because many people have suggested a lot of his tweets previously have been incendiary, but he's been allowed to carry on.
From my personal view, it's long overdue. He has incited hatred and promoted conspiracy theories and fomented a lot of very unnecessary anger through a series of lies and narratives that simply aren't true. I think it's overdue, but I also think it's difficult for those platforms not to provide an outlet for the President of the United States. It is his preferred way of communicating in what he calls a very unfiltered fashion. Unfortunately, his version of unfiltered is often very, very untrue. Certainly, I think Twitter in particular did a better job after the election when they started tagging his tweets as containing false information or making false claims about the election. And I think by the time Wednesday rolled around and he was on the platform congratulating anarchists and people attacking the United States Capitol, I think Twitter and some of the other social media companies had just made the decision that they simply had enough, that it's simply not worth it to them to have him on there behaving in the way he'd been doing.
Drew, it's been very interesting talking to you this morning. Thank you for your time. That's Drew Willison, who was formerly Senate Sergeant of Arms up until 2015. And that job incorporates, as you heard him explain, a lot of the security around those buildings. So his insight into what happened is very interesting.
Really interesting. Can I be slightly frivolous? I was distracted by his Christmas tree in the background.
Saw it too. Do you know what? I thought, given what we were talking about, I thought it wasn't a moment for saying it, but I saw it was quite dark and it wasn't lit up, but it was clearly still up, wasn't it? And what are we, January? No.
But I was on a Zoom call last night with a friend of mine who also still has her Christmas tree up. Not just a few fairy lights, but the entire thing.
Maybe traditions are different in the US, I'm not sure.
Well, she's in Bristol, so I don't know what her excuse is.
Okay, no, I mean, clearly you could just make the choice to keep them up anyway, but I just wondered, because he was in America, you know, Rachel,
yeah.
so I was wondering whether there...
Well, we've kept our house lights up. I know lots of people have, just because, Helen Willis, we need something, don't we, to lift the gloom a bit.
Kend. But perhaps a little bit of snow will have lifted the spirits for some in the north. Yeah.
Helen, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Right, it's 6:47. Thank you for being with us this morning. Right now, though, it's time for the film review with Anna Smith.